The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the Rexian homeworld. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, watching the humans with barely concealed satisfaction. The air recyclers hummed quietly, processing the different atmospheric requirements of so many alien life forms. Ambassador Guan Park stood at the center platform, her gray suit crisp and unwrinkled despite the 18-hour session. She was a small woman by human standards, barely over 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face showed no emotion as she listened to the list of demands. Behind her, Captain Daewon Kim stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his military uniform bearing no weapons, no decorations that might seem threatening. Counselor Threx, a massive Rexian with dark purple scales and 4 powerful arms, read from a holographic display that floated before him. His voice boomed through the chamber's translation systems. The human species will surrender 70% of all colony worlds to Galactic Council administration. The human military fleet will be reduced to no more than 200 vessels, all of which will be registered and tracked by Council monitoring stations. All human research into quantum mechanics, advanced propulsion, and artificial intelligence will cease immediately, and all data will be transferred to Council archives. Human trade vessels will be restricted to approved corridors and subject to random inspection. The list went on, and on, each demand more restrictive than the last. In the gallery above, alien journalists recorded everything, their various sensory organs focused on the human ambassador. Some species communicated through color changes in their skin, others through pheromones or electromagnetic pulses. But all of them shared the same sentiment. Finally, the humans would be controlled. For 3 centuries, humanity had spread through the galaxy like a wildfire. They established colonies on worlds other species considered too dangerous or too difficult. They built trade networks that connected distant sectors. Their technology appeared in markets across Council space, always a step ahead of anything the established species could produce. And they did it all with a smile, with offers of friendship and cooperation that somehow made other species feel inadequate. The Council had debated for 50 years about what to do with humanity. Some argued for immediate military action. Others suggested economic sanctions. But High Chancellor Vorn, an elderly being whose species had held power in the Council for millennia, had proposed this solution: give them an ultimatum they couldn't refuse. Demand everything. Force them to either fight or submit. Either way, the human problem would be solved. When Threx finally finished reading, the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Ambassador Park. She stood there, perfectly still, for a long moment. Then she touched her wrist device, and a simple document appeared on every screen in the chamber. "We accept," she said quietly. The translation systems carried her words to every species in their own language. But for several seconds, no one reacted. They had expected anger, defiance, desperate negotiation. Humans were supposed to be proud, weren't they? Stubborn, you? Accept. High Chancellor Vorn leaned forward in his floating chair. All of it. Yes, Giwon said. Humanity will comply with every demand. We will begin immediate withdrawal from contested territories. Our fleet will disperse within 72 hours. We will transfer all requested research data to Council servers by the end of the week. Threx's scales rippled with confusion. You're surrendering? Just like that? We are complying with the will of the Galactic Council, Jiwan replied. Isn't that what you wanted? Captain Daewon stepped forward and transmitted a series of coordinates to the Council database. These are the rally points for our fleet withdrawal. You'll be able to monitor every ship as they depart. We'll leave navigational beacons so you can verify we've left Council space. Something felt wrong. High Chancellor Vorn had lived for 400 years, and he had negotiated countless treaties and agreements. Never had he seen anyone surrender so completely, so quickly, especially not a species that had shown nothing but confidence for 300 years. What about your colony populations? Asked Counselor Mesh, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes. There are billions of humans spread across 200 worlds. We will evacuate them, G1 said simply. We have sufficient transport capacity. It will take approximately 6 months to complete the full evacuation, but we'll prioritize the worlds you've specifically requested access to. And where will you go? Vorn asked. G1 smiled then, a small expression that didn't reach her eyes. Home, Chancellor. We'll go home. Earth has plenty of room for us. We've been away too long anyway. The session ended shortly after. The council members filed out, some celebrating, others confused. In the human section of the orbital station, G1 and D1 walked back to their quarters in silence. Only when they were in the privacy of their own rooms, behind multiple layers of security, did D1 speak. That went exactly as predicted, he said. G-1 poured herself a glass of water from the recycler. They think we're weak. They think we're running away scared. Let them think that, D1 replied. Did you see Threx's face? He expected us to fight. Fighting would have given them what they wanted, G1 said. A reason to unite against us. A common enemy. This way. She took a sip of water. This way, they get everything they asked for, and nothing they need. Daewon pulled up a holographic display showing the location of every human ship in Council space. There were thousands of them, civilian and military, spread across hundreds of light years. With a few commands, he initiated the withdrawal sequence. One by one, the ships began moving toward the designated rally points, but those rally points weren't near Earth. They weren't near any known human territory. They were coordinates in deep space, in regions the Council had never explored. Areas marked as unprofitable or empty on galactic maps. How long? Daewon asked. G-1 checked her own display, which showed timelines and probability matrices calculated by human strategic computers. Conservative estimate. 5 years before the first cracks show. 7 before they realize what we've done. 10 before they have no choice but to ask us to come back. And if they don't ask, then we wait longer, G1 said. We're good at waiting. Outside the station, human ships began their exodus. They left behind fully functional colonies, advanced medical facilities, agricultural stations producing food for a dozen species. They left behind trade goods and technology and all the infrastructure they had built over 3 centuries. To the Council, it looked like a defeated species abandoning everything they had worked for. But in encrypted channels, in communications, the Council's primitive systems couldn't detect. Human ships shared a different message. A message that had been prepared centuries ago, waiting for exactly this moment. Phase 1 complete, the message said. Proceeding to Phase 2. The garden has been planted. Now we wait for harvest. 18 months had passed since the humans left, and Counselor Threx stood on the surface of what had once been the human colony of New Busan. The planet was beautiful, with purple grass covering rolling hills and 3 small moons visible in the daytime sky. The human settlement stretched for miles. Pristine white buildings connected by underground transit tubes, fusion reactors humming with enough power to supply 10 times the current population. It should have been a prize. It should have been a victory. Instead, it was becoming a nightmare. Show me again, Threx said to Dr. Velkar. The lead scientist assigned to study human technology, the elderly Vrexian scientist, his scales faded to a dull gray with age, pulled up a holographic display. It showed the colony's main computer core, a beautiful crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. We've tried every decryption method in the Council database, Velkar explained, his voice tired. The human security systems are based on quantum entanglement principles we don't fully understand. Every time we attempt to force access, the system degrades a little more, but we can still use the facilities. Threx asked. Yes, for now. The automated systems continue to function. The fusion reactors produce power. The water recyclers work. The medical facilities can perform basic functions, but we can't modify anything. We can't access the deeper programming. We can't replicate the technology. Threx's scales rippled with frustration. This was the same report he'd heard from every former human colony. 57 worlds, all of them abandoned in perfect condition, all of them impossible to truly control. The humans had left behind incredible gifts that the Council couldn't fully use, his communicator chimed. It was a priority message from the Council chambers. Threx accepted the call, and High Chancellor Vorn's aged face appeared in the hologram. "We need to discuss the economic reports," Vorn said without greeting. "Have you reviewed them?" "I've been dealing with the technology issues," Threx replied. "The economic issues are more urgent," Vorn said, and something in his voice made Threx pay attention. "Meet me in the virtual chamber in 1 hour. Bring Velkar." The call ended. Threx looked at the scientist, who had clearly heard everything. "What do you think that's about?" Velkar's scales flickered with uncertainty. "I've heard rumors from the trade sectors. Nothing confirmed." An hour later, Threx and Velkar sat in their respective neural link chairs. Their consciousnesses projected into a virtual meeting space where 30 council members had gathered. The virtual chamber looked identical to the real one, but here they could meet instantly, regardless of physical distance. High Chancellor Vorn didn't waste time with formalities. "We have a crisis developing, and most of you don't even realize it yet. Trade Master Quillix, please present your findings." A reptilian being materialized at the center platform. Quillix was a merchant who had made a fortune trading in human goods, and now he looked like someone who had just lost everything. "The human trade network is collapsing," Quillix said bluntly. "Not because of any single failure, but because we're running out of their products. Medical nanites that could cure bone cancer. We have perhaps 3 months of supply remaining across the entire galaxy. The agricultural seeds they sold us, the ones that doubled crop yields, they don't produce viable seeds for replanting. Everyone assumed the humans would keep supplying new stock." A wave of concerned communication rippled through the virtual chamber. Species expressed alarm through color changes, pheromone releases, and electromagnetic pulses. "It's worse than that," Vorn said. "The humans weren't just suppliers. They were intermediaries. They connected trade routes between species that couldn't communicate effectively with each other. They translated not just languages, but cultural concepts. They managed logistics for supply chains spanning hundreds of worlds." Counselor Mesh, the crystalline being, resonated with a frequency that translated as disbelief. "Surely we can replace these functions." "We're trying," Vorn said, "but it's proving more difficult than anticipated." The Vrexians and the Kelhans nearly went to war last month over a trade dispute that a human mediator would have solved in an afternoon. 3 different cargo shipments have been lost because no one knew the humans had been managing the scheduling algorithms for the main trade stations. Threx felt something cold settle in his chest. How did we not know they were this integrated into our economy? "Because they were quiet about it," said another counselor, a floating gas bag creature named Vorp. "They never demanded recognition. They just did things, made themselves useful, and we took it for granted." Dr. Velker spoke up from his position. "I've been analyzing the human technology on the colony worlds. I believe their systems were designed with planned obsolescence built in. Not in a way that causes immediate failure, but in a way that ensures we can't maintain them without human expertise." "That's a serious accusation," Vorn said. "Do you have proof?" "I have a recorded message," Velker said. "I found it embedded in one of the medical facility computers on New Busan. It appears to be from a human scientist named Dr. Heron Song. The file was encrypted, but it was designed to unlock after a specific date. That date was last week." "Play it," Threx demanded. The virtual chamber filled with the holographic image of a human woman in her 40s, wearing a white lab coat. She smiled pleasantly, as if recording a lecture for students. "Hello," Dr. Song said, in perfect galactic common. "If you're watching this, it means you've tried to reverse engineer or modify our technology. I'm recording this to save you some time and trouble. Our technology is based on mathematical principles that evolved from human cognitive patterns. Our quantum encryption uses human neural algorithms. Our fusion reactors are calibrated using equations that make intuitive sense to human physicists, but will seem arbitrary to you." She paused, her smile never wavering. "You can't copy what you can't understand. And you can't understand what you don't think like. I'm sorry, but your species simply process information differently than we do. The technology isn't locked because we're cruel. It's locked because your attempts to modify it will result in catastrophic failures. Please don't try." We designed it to work safely for you, as long as you don't tamper with the core systems." The message ended. The virtual chamber was silent. "It's impossible," Threk said finally. "Technology is universal. Mathematics is universal. Is it?" Velkar asked quietly. "We've always assumed that, but what if we're wrong? What if the way a species thinks fundamentally affects how they approach problem solving? The humans have only been in space for 800 years. We've been exploring the galaxy for 10,000. Yet their technology surpasses ours in multiple fields. What if it's not because they're smarter, but because they think differently?" More silence. Then Quillix spoke again. "There's something else. I've been tracking evacuation communications. The human ships that left Council space, they didn't go to Earth. Long-range sensors tracked them heading into unexplored sectors." "Unexplored by us," Vorn corrected, "but perhaps not unexplored by them." A new message appeared in the virtual chamber, flagged as intercepted communication. It was audio only, a fragment captured by a listening post at the edge of Council space. The voice was male, young, speaking in human language that the translation system rendered into Galactic Common. "This is Jinwoo Choi, transport vessel Goemgong. We're approaching the rally point. I can see them now. Hundreds of ships. Thousands. This isn't an evacuation. This is a fleet. They're all here, everything we've built over 3 centuries. The colonies weren't our home. They were our outposts. Our eyes and ears. And now we're going to the real home, the place we've been building while everyone watched us play nice with the Council." Static interrupted the message. Then Jinwoo's voice came back, laughing. "The seeds are planted. Now we wait for harvest. They don't even know yet. They think they won." The message ended. Threx looked around the virtual chamber at the faces of the other counselors. Some showed confusion. Others showed the first hints of fear. "What does that mean?" Counselor Mesh asked. "What seeds?" But Threx was beginning to understand, and the understanding made his scales itch with suppressed panic. The humans hadn't been defeated. They hadn't run away. They had left deliberately, taking with them everything that mattered while leaving behind beautiful, useless prizes that the Council couldn't maintain. "We need to find them," Threx said. "We need to bring them back. And if they refuse?" Vorn asked. "Then we make them," Threx said, but his voice lacked conviction. For years after the human departure, High Chancellor Vorn sat in his private chambers and reviewed casualty reports. The numbers made him feel older than his 4 centuries of life. 17 million dead on Kelhan Prime from a disease that human medical nanites could have cured in weeks. 34 million facing starvation on the agricultural world of Dreshen, because the human seed variants had failed after 3 generations, just as that recorded message had warned. But the numbers didn't capture the real horror. They didn't show the fear in people's eyes. They didn't record the way civilizations were starting to fracture. His door chimed. Vorn granted entry without looking up, knowing it would be his aide with more bad news. "It always was these days, Chancellor. There's been another incident at Outpost 17, the aide said. Vorn finally raised his head. "What kind of incident?" "The station's fusion reactor experienced a cascade failure. The engineering team was trying to modify the output controls. They'd hired a Vrexian physicist who claimed he'd figured out the human equations. How many dead?" "All 43 crew members. The station is a debris field now." Vorn closed his eyes. Outpost 17 had been a human-built trade station, one of dozens that had been abandoned when they left. The Council had been so proud to inherit such advanced facilities. Now they were death traps to anyone who tried to understand them. "That's the 8th station we've lost to similar incidents," Vorn said. "Yes." "Chancellor, tell me something good." "Anything." Aide hesitated. "Trademaster Quillix reports that he's found a Xanthian engineer who successfully replicated human water recycling technology." "Really?" Vorn felt a tiny spark of hope. "The system works at about 40% efficiency compared to the human version, and it requires 6 times the power input. But yes, it works." The hope died. 40% efficiency. After 4 years of trying, the best minds in the galaxy had managed to create an inferior copy of a system humans had mass-produced and sold cheaply throughout Council space. Vorn's communicator lit up with an emergency priority signal. He accepted it, and Counselor Threx appeared, his purple scales looking dull and unhealthy. "We need an emergency session," Threx said without preamble. "The Vrexian-Kelhan border conflict has escalated. They're mobilizing fleets." "Over what?" Vorn asked, though he already knew. Every conflict these days came back to the same root cause: resources. The Kelhans claim the Vrexians are hoarding medical supplies. The Vrexians claim the Kelhans violated trade agreements. "It's all falling apart, Chancellor. The communication systems the humans maintained, the neutral mediation they provided, the invisible work they did to keep everyone talking to each other. Without it, we're reverting to tribalism." Vorn stood, his aging joints protesting. "Assemble the council. Full session. I'll address them directly." 6 hours later, Vorn stood at the center platform of the council chamber and looked out at the representatives of 47 species. So many empty seats. 3 species had withdrawn from the council entirely, declaring independence. 5 others had stopped sending representatives, too busy with internal crises to care about galactic politics. "We need to discuss what everyone is thinking, but no one wants to say," Vorn began. "We made a mistake. A catastrophic mistake. We thought we were controlling the humans by forcing them to leave. We thought we were protecting ourselves. Instead, we cut out the heart of our civilization." Angry responses flooded the chamber. Counselor Mesh's crystalline structure pulsed with disagreement. "They left voluntarily. They surrendered. How is that our fault?" "Did they surrender?" Vorn asked. "Or did we give them exactly what they wanted? An excuse to leave, with no blame attached to them?" Dr. Valkar, now a permanent council advisor, spoke from his section. "I've spent 4 years studying their technology and their behavior patterns. I've reviewed every interaction between humans and council species over the past 3 centuries, and I've reached a conclusion that terrifies me." "Share it," Vorn said. "This was planned," Valkar said. "Not the specific ultimatum, but the overall strategy. The humans integrated themselves into our civilization in ways that seemed helpful, but were actually creating dependencies. They gave us technology that improved our lives, but that we couldn't maintain ourselves. They connected our trade networks in ways that seemed like cooperation, but that made them irreplaceable. And they did it so gradually, so quietly that we never noticed." "That's conspiracy thinking," Threx objected, but his voice lacked certainty. "Is it?" Velkar pulled up a holographic display showing economic data. "Look at this timeline. 300 years ago, humans first joined the galactic community. Within 50 years, 15% of all galactic trade involved human intermediaries. Within 100 years, 40%. They didn't do this through conquest or force. They did it by being helpful, efficient, and friendly. They made themselves indispensable." Another counselor, a floating jellyfish-like being named Quillith, pulsed with bioluminescent communication. "But why? What do they gain by leaving?" "Everything," said a new voice. The chamber fell silent. On the main display, a recorded message was playing, one that had just been received at the outer listening posts. The speaker was a young human woman standing in what looked like a classroom. "My name is Bior Shin," she said. "I'm a history teacher at the New Soul Academy. I'm recording this message for a time capsule that will be opened in 50 years, so future students can understand the long game strategy. The strategy began 273 years ago when our first contact teams met the Galactic Council. Our sociologists immediately identified the fundamental weakness in your civilization. You think in terms of immediate gain. You negotiate for advantage today, tomorrow, next year. You don't think in centuries?" Biora smiled, and it was a teacher's smile, patient and slightly condescending. "So we developed a strategy that would take 300 years to execute. We would integrate ourselves into your civilization. We would make you dependent on us. And then, when you inevitably felt threatened by our success and tried to control us, we would leave. We would walk away and let you discover just how much you needed us. Not through war, not through threats, simply by being absent." She gestured to something off camera. "The colony worlds you think we abandoned? They were never our real homes. They were research stations. trading posts. Places where we could study you, understand you, find every weak point in your civilization. Our real colonies, our true civilization, was always out here. In the sectors you marked as empty because you lack the technology to properly scan them.
Ow.
The message flickered, and for a moment the view changed to show a massive space station. Far larger than anything in Council space, surrounded by hundreds of ships that made the Council's greatest vessels look like toys. We've been building this for 3 centuries, Biora continued. Using the profits from our trade with you. Using the resources from worlds you didn't know how to harvest. And now we're ready? The question isn't whether you'll ask us to come back. The question is what we'll demand when you do. The message ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Species shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for surrender. A few simply left, their representatives disconnecting from the session. Threx stood, his scales dark with rage. We need to find them. We need to send a fleet. I already did, Vorn said quietly. The chamber went silent again. Everyone turned to look at the High Chancellor. 2 years ago, Vorn continued, I sent our best ships to track the human exodus routes. 300 vessels, all equipped with the finest sensors and weapons the Council could provide. They were under strict orders to find the human colonies and open negotiations. And Threx demanded, they never returned. No wreckage. No distress signals. No evidence of battle. They simply ... vanished. One day they were sending regular reports. The next day, nothing. It's as if they flew into a void and ceased to exist. Dr. Velkar's scales had gone pale. Or as if they encountered something so far beyond our technology that they couldn't even send a warning. A new message appeared on the chamber's main display. It was text only in simple galactic common. Phase 2 complete. They're fragmenting, as predicted. Military assets neutralized. Economic collapse accelerating. Social cohesion failing. Estimated time to complete dependency, 3 years. Recommend maintaining observation distance. Do not interfere. Let the system work. Signed, Young Jahan, Strategic Observation Fleet. Vorn read the message twice, then a third time. Each word was like a nail in a coffin. They're not hiding from us, he said finally. They're watching us. Studying us. Waiting for us to break completely. How do we not break? Vorn asked. We're running out of medicine. Our crops are failing. Our communication networks are degrading. Our species are fighting each other over scraps. The humans created this situation over 3 centuries. How do we fix it in 3 years? No one had an answer. The council session dissolved into arguments and accusations. Species blamed each other for the crisis. Old grudges resurfaced. Alliance treaties were questioned. And through it all, Vorn could feel the invisible pressure of humanity watching. Waiting, knowing that every fight, every failure, every loss brought the council closer to the only solution left. 7 years had passed since the humans walked away, and the Galactic Council was dying. Not quickly. Not with the drama of war or the spectacle of collapse, but slowly, like a tree rotting from the inside. High Chancellor, Vorn looked ancient now, his skin translucent and thin, his movements slow and careful. He sat alone in the council chamber, which had become more empty with each passing year. Only 12 species still sent regular representatives. The others had either withdrawn entirely or were too consumed by their own crises to care about galactic politics. A soft chime indicated an incoming data package. Vorn almost ignored it, tired of the endless stream of bad news, but something made him open it. The package had arrived at the main communication relay station, encrypted with quantum-level security that should have been impossible to maintain for 7 years. Yet here it was, pristine and uncorrupted. The encryption key activated automatically. And Vorn realized the package had been programmed to open on this exact date at this exact time. Someone had planned this 7 years ago, down to the second. A holographic figure materialized in front of him. A human man in his 60s, wearing a military uniform that bore no insignia Vorn recognized. His face was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes held something else. Knowledge. Certainty. "Hi, Chancellor Vorn," the man said. "My name is Admiral Taejung Lee, commander of the Human Strategic Planning Division. If you're watching this, it means 7 years have passed since we left Council Space. I'm recording this message to answer the question I know you've been asking. Why?" Vorn leaned forward, his ancient heart beating faster. "You asked why we walked away?" Taeyong continued. "You assumed we were weak, that your ultimatum forced us to retreat. You never asked the right question. You should have asked why we were there in the first place." As the hologram changed, showing Earth as it had looked 300 years ago, just before first contact. The planet was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents. "When we first detected your civilization," Taeyang said, "we were already more advanced than you. Not by much, perhaps only a century or two ahead in most fields. But we had something you lacked. We had unity. One species, one planet, working together. We looked at the Galactic Council and saw 47 species that barely tolerated each other, held together by convenience and fear. Our sociologists studied you for 10 years before we made first contact. They identified your fundamental weakness. You think in terms of political cycles, trade quarters, military campaigns. Your longest strategic plans span perhaps 20 years. We think in generations, in centuries, so we developed a strategy that would take 300 years to execute." Vorn felt cold spreading through his chest. 300 years. Before he was even born, before most of the current council members existed, humanity had been planning this. "We made first contact," Taeyong continued. "But we hid our true technological capabilities. We released downgraded versions of our technology into your markets. Not bad technology, understand. It was genuinely useful, genuinely helpful, but always with limitations built in. Limitations that ensured you would need us to maintain it." The hologram showed human trade ships, human colonies, human diplomats, smiling and shaking hands with aliens. "We studied your psychology, your sociology, your economics. We learned what every species feared, what they desired, what made them fight, what made them cooperate, and we positioned ourselves as the solution to your problems. Need a mediator? Humans are excellent diplomats. Need advanced medicine? Human biotech is revolutionary. Need agricultural improvements? Human seed variants will transform your farms." Files began scrolling past, showing trade records, diplomatic agreements, technology transfers. "Centuries of data. We made you dependent," Taeyong said simply. "Not through force. Not through deception, really. We genuinely helped you. We improved your lives. We made your civilization better. But we did it in a way that ensured you couldn't maintain those improvements without us." Vorn wanted to shut off the recording, but he couldn't move. He had to hear this. He had to know. "The technology we gave you was based on human cognitive patterns," Taeyong explained. "Our mathematics evolved from how human brains process information. Our engineering principles reflect how we solve problems. We knew you could use our technology, but you could never truly understand it. You think differently than we do. Your species evolved on different worlds, with different challenges, different survival strategies. Those differences run deep, deeper than most people realize." A new face appeared in the hologram, a young human girl in her 20s with bright eyes and an enthusiastic smile. Text identified her as Bora Shin, age 23, recorded 290 years ago. "This is our future," she said, gesturing excitedly at something off camera. "I just finished my dissertation on long-term strategic integration. The council species have been in space for thousands of years, but they've never unified. They compete, they fight, they make temporary alliances. We can use that. We integrate ourselves into their civilization. We become essential. And then, when they inevitably feel threatened by our success, she paused, her smile widening. We leave. We walk away. And we let them discover what they've lost." The recording jumped forward, showing Biora at different ages, always talking about the same project. At 40, presenting her findings to what appeared to be a human government council. At 60, training younger strategists. At 80, frail but satisfied, watching data streams that showed the plan unfolding exactly as predicted. Biora Shin died 50 years ago, Taeyang said, his voice soft with respect. But her strategy lived on. 3 generations of humans dedicated their lives to this plan, building our true colonies in the unexplored sectors, creating the infrastructure for a civilization that could stand independent of the council. Waiting for the right moment? The hologram showed the council session 7 years ago, the ultimatum being delivered, Ambassador G1Parks.com acceptance. You gave us that moment, Taeyang said. Your ultimatum was exactly what we needed. A clear, documented reason to leave. No one could blame us. We were victims, forced out by council aggression. The entire galaxy saw you as bullies and us as the peaceful species that simply wanted to be left alone. Warren felt something breaking inside him. Not anger, not even fear. Just a terrible, hollow understanding. We didn't conquer you with weapons, Taeyang said. We conquered you with patience, with kindness, with 300 years of making ourselves indispensable while building our real civilization somewhere you couldn't see it. The hologram changed one final time, showing a sight that made Vorn gasp. It was a space station, but calling it that was like calling a star a candle. It stretched across millions of kilometers, a ring of habitats and docks and construction facilities. Thousands of ships moved around it, each one larger and more advanced than anything in council space. This is New Sol Station, Taeyang said. One of 12 major stations we've built in the unexplored sectors. Together, they house 8 billion humans. We have colonies on 200 worlds that you've never detected. We have industries that produce more in a day than your entire council produces in a year. And we've had all of this for over a century. Growing and developing while you thought we were just your friendly neighbors? Human faces filled the hologram. Thousands of them, young and old, looking healthy and happy and confident. The colonial worlds we abandoned? Taeyang said. They were always temporary. Research outposts. Places where we could study you up close. The populations you thought were in the billions? Actually in the hundreds of thousands. We evacuated them to here, to our real homes. And they've been watching you ever since. The image shifted to show observation posts, sensor arrays. Intelligence officers reviewing data about council movements. We know about the fleet you sent to find us 7 years ago, Taeyang said. 300 ships, correct? We detected them long before they reached our territory. We gave them one chance to turn back. They didn't, so we disabled their ships and sent the crews home in escape pods. They should have arrived at council space about 2 years ago. Did they tell you what they saw? Vorn's blood ran cold. 2 years ago, a group of escape pods had been found drifting at the edge of council space. The crews were alive but catatonic, in severe psychological shock. They couldn't speak, couldn't function. The medical teams had assumed some kind of alien weapon had been used on them. They saw our civilization, Taeyang said softly. They saw how far ahead we actually are. It broke them. The understanding that everything they believed about humanity, everything the council taught them, was a lie. We weren't refugees. We weren't the weaker species seeking protection. We were observers, studying you, waiting. The Admiral's face reappeared, and for the first time, Vorn saw something like sympathy in his expression. I'm sorry, Chancellor. I know this is hard to hear, but you need to understand what's happening. Your civilization is collapsing not because we're attacking you, but because we stopped supporting you. The invisible work we did, the connections we maintained, the problems we solved quietly in the background, all of that is gone now. And you're discovering that you can't maintain the standard of living you've grown accustomed to. 10 years after the humans left, Ambassador Narration arrived at Neutral Station 7. She was young for such an important position. Barely 35, with sharp eyes and an easy smile that somehow made everyone who met her nervous. She wore a simple gray suit, carried no weapons, and traveled with only 2 aides. Behind her ship, visible on every sensor in the system, waited a fleet of 200 human vessels. Each one was 3 times the size of the Council's largest. Warship, High Chancellor Vorn had died 2 years earlier. His last act, signing the formal request for humanity to return to galactic affairs. The new High Chancellor was Quillith, the jellyfish-like being who had once served as a junior counselor. She floated in her specialized environment chamber, watching Nari approach the conference room with her bioluminescent communication organs pulsing nervously. Only 7 council members had come to the meeting. 7 out of the original 47 species. The rest had either collapsed completely, withdrawn into isolation, or were too busy fighting among themselves to care about galactic politics. Anymore Nari entered the conference room and took a seat at the central platform. She didn't wait for formal greetings or traditional diplomatic protocols. She simply opened a holographic display and began. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said. "I've reviewed your formal request for humanity to resume trade and diplomatic relations. I've also reviewed the casualty reports, the economic data, and the intelligence assessments of your current situation. I understand you're desperate. So let's not waste time with posturing or negotiation. I'm going to tell you exactly what will happen, and you're going to accept it." Counselor Threx, who had somehow survived the decade of chaos, bristled at her tone. His purple scales had gone dull and patchy with age and stress. "You're very confident for someone whose species abandoned the galaxy." "We didn't abandon the galaxy," Nari corrected. "We abandoned you. There's a difference. The galaxy is still here. Humanity is still here. You're just not the center of it anymore." She pulled up a galactic map. It showed council space in red, which had shrunk considerably. Human space was marked in blue, and it covered 3 times the territory the council had ever controlled. "While you were struggling to maintain what you had," Nari said, "we were expanding. We've established colonies on 418 worlds. We've made contact with 23 species you didn't even know existed. We've built infrastructure that makes your old trade networks look like dirt roads, and we've done it all without you." Quillith pulsed with what the translation system rendered as resigned acceptance. "Then why are you here? If you've surpassed us so completely, why bother returning?" "Because humanity learned something over the past 300 years, Nari said, and her voice softened slightly. "We learned that isolation isn't the answer. Yes, we needed to separate from you. We needed to prove that we weren't dependent on the council, that we could stand on our own. But that doesn't mean we want to watch your civilizations die." She changed the display, showing medical facilities, agricultural stations, communication networks. "We can help you. We can provide the medicine you need, the technology to feed your people, the systems to rebuild your infrastructure. But it won't be like before. Before you thought you were our equals, our partners. You thought you could control us with ultimatums. That's over. So we become your subjects?" Threx asked bitterly. "No," Nari said. "You become our responsibility. There's a difference, though. I understand it might not feel like one." She stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars. 300 years ago, when humanity first encountered the Council, we made a mistake. We tried to fit into your civilization. We tried to be equals in a system that wasn't designed for equality. The Council was built on competition, on species protecting their own interests, on temporary alliances held together by fear. She turned back to face them. "We're not going to make that mistake again. Humanity will not join the Galactic Council. We will not participate in your debates or vote on your resolutions. Instead, we're offering something different. A partnership, but one where the terms are clear from the start." The holographic display changed again, showing a document. Nari's voice became formal, as if reading from a prepared statement. "Humanity will reestablish trade networks with all Council species. We will provide medical aid, agricultural support, and technological assistance. We will help rebuild your communication systems and mediate disputes between species. In exchange, you will provide us with complete transparency. Every military asset, every government decision that affects interstellar affairs, every major policy change will be reported to human observers. You will accept permanent human presence at all major Council facilities. And you will allocate 40% of all resource extraction and industrial output to human administration. Silence filled the conference room. The 7 counselors looked at each other, communicating through their various means. And Nari could see the calculation happening. They were weighing slavery against extinction. 40% of everything, Quillith asked finally. 40% that will be used to maintain the infrastructure that keeps you alive, Nari said. The medical facilities, the trade networks, the communication systems. All the things you can't maintain yourselves. Think of it as an administration fee. And if we refuse? Threx asked, though his voice held no real challenge. Nari's expression didn't change. Then, we leave again. We go back to our own space. We continue expanding into the unexplored sectors. And we watch your civilization collapse completely. Which, based on our projections, will take approximately 18 months. After that, the galaxy will be empty of advanced civilization except for us. We'll wait another century or 2, then come back and claim whatever's left. She said it without malice, without anger. Just stating facts, like a weather report. Ow. You'd let billions die? Another counselor asked, a crystalline being who had replaced Mesh after his species had withdrawn from council affairs. We'd let you make your own choices, Nari corrected. You chose to force us out. You chose to ignore our warnings about maintaining the technology we'd provided. You chose to fight each other instead of working together. Those were your decisions. We're simply choosing not to save you from the consequences unless you accept our help on our terms. Oh. More silence. Then Quillith spoke, her bioluminescence dim with defeat. How long do we have to decide? You don't, Nari said. You've already decided when you sent that formal request for us to return. You knew what it meant. You knew you were accepting whatever terms we offered. You just hoped the terms would be better than this. She sat down again, her expression softening slightly. I know this is hard. I know it feels like you're surrendering your sovereignty. But consider the alternative. Right now, you have 7 functioning species in council space. 7 out of 47. The others have either collapsed or are in the process of collapsing. If you accept our help, those civilizations can be rebuilt. The dead worlds can be repopulated. The technology can be restored. Your children can grow up in a stable galaxy. Under human oversight, Threx said. Under human protection, Nari countered. We're not your enemies. We never were. We were just tired of being treated as junior members of a club that couldn't function without us. Now the relationship is clear. You need us. We don't need you. But we're willing to help anyway, because that's what advanced civilizations do. A new hologram appeared, showing Admiral Taeyong Li, older now, but still sure-pied. He spoke directly to the council. I'm transmitting this from New Sol Station, he said. I want you to understand something. The fleet you see outside your window? That's not even 1% of our military capability. Those medical supplies Ambassador Yoon is offering? We can produce them faster than you can use them. The technology you're struggling to maintain. We've advanced 3 generations beyond it. We're not showing you this to threaten you. We're showing you this so you understand that resistance is pointless and cooperation is the only rational choice. He paused, and something like regret crossed his face. 300 years ago, we tried to be your equals. You rejected us. You tried to control us. You forced us to leave. So we left and we built something better without you. Now we're coming back not as equals, but as what we always were. The more advanced species. Accept that, and we can help you. Fight it, and you'll face extinction alone. The hologram ended. Nari pulled out a data tablet and placed it on the table. This contains the full treaty details. You have 24 hours to review it and sign. If you don't sign, we leave. For good this time? She stood to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. There's a human historian named Sojin Kwan, who's been documenting everything that's happened over the past 300 years. I asked her what she thought the lesson of this era was. Do you know what she said? The counselors waited. She said the lesson was simple. The galaxy doesn't belong to the species that's strongest or fastest or most aggressive. It belongs to the species that thinks furthest ahead. You thought in terms of years? We thought in terms of centuries, and that's why you're sitting here, accepting our terms while we're offering them.